Hello, hello. Oh no, technical difficulties all around. Welcome to this week's episode of the Nonprofit Marketing Mastery video podcast. I am super excited today to have CF Callahan here to talk. To talk all about Pride Month 2024, but more specifically, a campaign he did to raise awareness of nonprofits, not only in Nashville, but in Tennessee and actually nationally. So we are going to go ahead and dive a little bit more into that. But first, I want to update for all of you that have been following. We're currently, I believe this is episode 12 of Nonprofit Marketing Mastery. And you'll see I'm going to go silent for a bit, and it's not because I am going away and this isn't going away. It's actually coming back with a new fresh face, a new fresh voice, still mine, to continue to provide video content from nonprofit nerds just like me and to pick their brain on the other side of this summer. So I'll see you back. But I'm so excited again to have CF Callahan here. He is the founder and CEO of Heart Strategy Impact, based in Nashville, Tennessee, but serving nonprofits in Tennessee, but actually across the country, correct?
Yeah.
And his real niche has a pretty diverse background in fundraising and development. But I will tell you, in terms of fundraising strategy consultants, really does come from, again, a heart-centered, heart-forward approach, but really has a strategic brain. So excited first to talk to him about Heart Strategy Impact, why he created it, what's happening right now, what's happening in the future, but also to talk, and if you haven't followed CF Callahan, follow him on LinkedIn and follow the 30 Days of Pride or 30 Days of LGBTQ plus organizations where, no joke, 30 days straight, every single day was featured a new organization doing great work in his community and in the state of Tennessee and again, nationally. So first, so excited. Thank you again, CF, for joining today.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and then please, I'd love to hear, and I know people are curious, so Heart Strategy Impact, what is it and why did you put up a shingle?
Yeah, sure. I have worked in tons of different nonprofits, from universities, ballet companies, mental health centers, museums. And, part of it was me recognizing that I feel like I can help more people and more nonprofits doing this work, being a consultant, than I can working inside one organization. Fundraising principles are broadly the same. There's different nuances when you go to different organizations. It's different raising money at a health organization than it is a museum or a ballet company, but the principles are the same. So I really love working with small and mid-size nonprofits, typically where the CEO's new and they just need not only the technical best practice support around fundraising, but also the emotional and accountability that comes with the angst of fundraising. Very few people like to talk about money, and fundraising makes them nervous. And I'm here to help people make it easier to ask people for money. So.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so funny. I think for those of you that don't, CF and I talked offline, I think 2 months ago. And one of my clients for marketing work, I think really needs CF hand-holding him through the, especially mid-tier and major giving process, because a lot of, it's in the nonprofit space, a lot of people come up as being practitioners first. They're not fundraising experts, right? And then all of a sudden they wear that hat. So talk to me more, before we dive into the campaign for Pride, talk to me a little bit more about like what pain points, like what brings someone to be like, hey, help me, Heart Strategy Impact?
Where I've found the most angst is really the new nonprofit leaders. We're seeing a huge change, a generational change. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and we are a little old school place. There are CEOs that have been in roles for 25, 30 plus years, and they're retiring. And you've got the second in command or maybe a program director who's moving into that role who's never fundraised before. They're not even financially literate to the point they feel really comfortable looking at a P&L. I've worked with an organization where I'm like, do you even know how to read this P&L? Like, you got to know that. These are important things. And so what I'm finding is folks who are like, I'm new and I just don't even know where to start. Like I need cash. and they're like, maybe I should write a grant. And I'm like, that's not going to get you any cash anytime soon. We
Maybe you should write a grant. It's always a grant.
if you want, we've got to figure out what the problem is. Sometimes they can't even articulate the problem when it comes to fundraising. So what I like to do is go in, help diagnose what they really need. But it's really folks who are new to a CEO role, new to a leadership role, or maybe even a fundraising role, who just need that extra guidance and support and being like, okay, here's what I'm thinking. Is this the right way to go about it? And there is a best practice answer most of the time, but also it really just depends on how your board is and what the systems you have. And so you got to take all that into consideration to be able to chart a path forward.
Yeah. And then I know you and I talked, we're going to save some time to end to talk more specifically about Heart Strategy Impact. But I did invite you on, and I'd love to chat with you a little bit more. I think I like people that are fun people. It's one of Nonprofit Marketing Nerds, like vision, part of it, our vision, right? And core values. And you're someone that is, I think, aligns with me in that fun and strategy are very central to our beings, right? Like, and I've respected you from afar, met with you once, and then I saw what you were doing for Pride on LinkedIn. Will you talk about the 30 Days of LGBTQ plus organization campaign? I'll call it a mini campaign.
Yeah.
What you did or what you're currently in the process of doing, right? And talk to me more.
Yeah, Kelly. Well, I appreciate that. And I agree. Like, let's put the fun in fundraising. I know you're marketing, but nonprofit work is tough work. You got to have a strong backbone. You got to have an optimistic outlook. So, one of the things that I wanted to do was one personally in reference to the 30 days of what I'm calling my favorite LGBTQ plus nonprofits is remind people that there are some great organizations doing amazing things during this Pride Month. But then also I've learned a lot about a bunch of organizations that I didn't know anything about. And it was also a way for me to tap into the people that I know to understand if there are organizations that they really appreciate. So it's been a really great give and take of not only me learning about new nonprofits, but able to kind of share all of the work that these great organizations are doing. And at first I thought, am I going to find 30? I mean, there are thousands of organizations. A lot of them are doing similar work just in different communities, but the story of how they got started has been, some of the more fascinating pieces of information to share. So highlighting these great groups and really just putting a challenge on myself of like learning, growing, and sharing.
Yes, learning, growing, and sharing. I love that. And see, I think, I don't know that I could do it, right? Like 30 days in a row of anything consistently. And I'm sure you're batch creating content, but I've almost been watching each of them being like, is he maintaining the same consistency? Is he still being thorough? Is there anybody shortcutting? And no, like it's amazing. I know you're not shortcutting anything. You're giving every organization, I think, the same weight, attention, respect. And I think that's something that in terms of like, if you're choosing your fundraising consultant based on character, I think is very admirable of you.
I appreciate it.
So tell me more about what was the most like surprise? You said founder story was interesting. What's the most surprising founder's story of an organization that you're sharing about so far?
I think one of the things that we lose sight of is sort of the history. We're in the moment. I'm in my 30s. I don't know anything before, really the early 90s or the 80s. I mean, I was a little kid. I didn't know anything. But I think one of the more profound organizations, and I'll probably get a little emotional, is an organization called ACT UP. And that is a result of inaction on the government, on corporate America's role in dealing with the HIV and AIDS crisis. And so you've got these people who are just fed up, they're frustrated that there's no response. And that has morphed to being a resource for people with HIV and AIDS. And obviously the gay community was affected the most in early days because of HIV and AIDS. And so I was with a friend, same age as me, and there was a reference to ACT UP. They didn't know what it was. And I'm like, this is like one of the early seminal organizations who really, from a grassroots advocacy perspective, really, really moved the dial. So to be able to share organizations that I think people may not be as familiar with, especially outside of New York, where they're very popular and prominent, is important to me. The other one, and you may know this person, Matthew Shepard,
Mhm. Yeah.
brutally murdered in 1998. That was me being a young person who was 14, discovering his identity, and I'm like, am I going to be safe?
Yeah.
Am I going to be? Is it going to be okay to come out? Because this has happened, and so to be able to share his story, what his parents have done, and ultimately through that work, sponsored and passed legislation to include sexual orientation as a hate crime.
Uh-huh. Wow. Um, so no, thank you again. And I think some people that are watching this, I'm gonna go ahead and have a link. So I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna go ahead and so if you're curious about some of these stories, again, like CF's giving a little bit of a summary, but they're wonderful summaries on his LinkedIn. So if you're watching this replay, we are in June 2024. Go to his LinkedIn, go back, and I'll make sure to link that to his LinkedIn below, so you can rewatch some of the specific reels, we'll call them, right, that you've created on each of the organizations. Okay. So there was one organization, maybe you can remind me, and sorry if I put you on the spot, but one organization that really spoke to me that also has a lot of passion for immigration, refugee, asylum seekers, which I wasn't aware of. And I couldn't be a name dropper. I don't remember the organization, but I did know it existed. And I think it was based out of Canada. Was it based out of Canada?
Yep.
Will you share a little bit more about that organization and kind of what they do?
Yeah, sure. And so I was in, let me just preface with, I was in Toronto for the Association of Fundraising Professionals Conference. I met tons of awesome fundraisers there, have a little cohort of other LGBT folks. We refer to ourselves, the organization is now as AFP. We call ourselves Gay FP. And so I asked that group, because we still maintain connection. I said, are there organizations that you all are just like in love with that are doing amazing work? One of them recommended Rainbow Railroad. So most Americans are familiar with the Underground Railroad, you know, getting slaves from the South to the North for their freedom. Rainbow Railroad is about getting, I mean, it's humbling to know that there are organizations that are doing this work. It's to help individuals who are in countries where it is illegal to be gay to get to safety. And this is a Canadian organization. It's out of Vancouver. It's called Rainbow Railroad. And so they are helping people get from places of where there is a lack of safety for them just being themselves to a place where they can be fully themselves in Canada or other countries where it is safe to be out and open. And so the work that they do in the context of what's going on politically in the United States right now, with, you know, asylum either being reduced or on at all, this organization, I mean, asylum exists to help people come out of troubling environments. This organization is specifically helping individuals who are identify as LGBTQ plus, getting to safety so that they can be out and open.
And Rainbow Railroad, correct?
Rainbow Railroad.
Okay. And then I want to take a step back. And again, I want to thank you for putting in the work to bring to light and focus important organizations doing important work. And I think not just for the LGBTQ plus community, but for all humanity, right? So thank you for bringing to light things about basic human rights, right? So thank you so much for that. I want to talk to you a little bit about like the process of researching and creating and like 30 days of high quality, research driven, scripted, which I just learned, right? How did you do it? And I'm a marketing person talking about it, and I'm like, I don't think I could have done that. Talk to me. And I know you're day 20 in, correct? Or further along than 20?
Yeah, is it the 20th? Yeah. I feel like I missed an opportunity, marketer, for this. So I am from West Virginia. Today is West Virginia's birthday. It's statehood day for West Virginia. And I thought, I've already done a couple West Virginia stories. And I thought this would have been a perfect day to highlight, West Virginia Pride or one of those organizations. But part of it was building awareness and community with other people who care about this work broadly. So one, it was me asking my network of like, are there organizations that you absolutely love that you would love for me to highlight? Because
Yeah.
that is fun to get your friends engaged, to get your colleagues engaged. And I would say half of the organizations were recommendations to me. I didn't know anything about them, but what I wanted to do was learn, how they got started, what do they do, what are some highlights, and then just share some of the visual content that exists out there on the web of, excited people, happy people, and just do a really quick 1 minute. I think my longest one was maybe a minute and 20, 30 seconds, but I made sure that they were a minute long. So I edited each script to really just highlight the big important things. But honestly, the value in doing these stories is like, what's the connection? Like,
Uh-huh.
why is this important to me, or why is it important to a friend of mine? Today's was from a connection of a person who actually met in Toronto, again at the AFP conference. And they're based in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I said, again, I asked my network, I said, give me some names of organizations that you absolutely love. She gave me a huge list. So one, I had to kind of figure out like which one was unique, what was really making a big impact. And so today's story was just, it was a nod to her, and something that she's passionate about, just to raise my own level of awareness, and then kind of give back to her involvement with me of saying, I really love this organization, please highlight them.
Yeah, cool. And thank you too. I think I saw you were doing this, and that's how I, right? So community and connection. And I saw that you were doing this. I'm like, I need to bring on, it's an important campaign and an important time. So thank you for building connection this way as well.
Yeah.
So I, a nonprofit marketing nerd, the majority of the nonprofits we serve are food, shelter, clothing. I have a personal passion for immigration and reentry services. And I think something, I say food, shelter, clothing, because those are what most nonprofits do, because they are the essential services, right? And when you look at some of the organizations that you were talking about, they're probably providing some of those things, right?
Yeah.
They're providing homelessness services and food services. Was there any mission delivery that you found were like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing when you were researching the organizations? Like, that's an interesting service, or that's an interesting mission. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's a good question. And what it makes me think of, and I think this is where it's a little bit distinct with, say, non-LGBT centered organizations, is, in most major cities, probably statewide organizations have what's considered sort of the Pride organization. So there's Nashville Pride, there's Kentuckiana Pride, there's Parkersburg Pride, which is where I'm from. And so I was able to highlight those organizations. Nashville Pride is this weekend. Kentuckiana, which is Louisville, Kentucky, was last weekend. And those organizations don't exist in the context of straight society necessarily. And sort of like, people, when Pride Month starts, the haters kind of say, well, what about straight pride? Or what about this? And it's like, well, we weren't allowed to get married.
Right.
Until 2015 legally. We don't have, in some states, some of the same rights that other folks do. So it is about building community, raising a flag to say that like you are safe and you are welcome. And so I think when you look at, say, like healthcare organizations, yes, there may be some demographic groups within, like folks focused on, Black health or Hispanic health or something like that. But when you think about the LGBT community, almost every major city is going to have an LGBT organization centered around just focused on pride, awareness, and visibility. And so I think that is unique to our demographic. And I hate to be kitschy, but we love to throw a party. We love to get together. We love to have a good time. I know you do too, Kelly.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go to Pride. We're going to have some drinks. We're going to listen to some music. We're going to hang out with lots of people who care about us, support us, and want to feel equal and accepted in society.
Yeah, and I hope Mexico City Pride takes over the entire city, and it was right outside of our doorsteps, our apartment in Mexico City. Yes. Sometime add that to your list of places to go and celebrate Pride. Okay,
yeah,
so wonderful. Yeah. And I think too, it's more important, it's maybe in a country, right, where there's not the same safe spaces in more rural areas. So it's especially important in Mexico City.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to pick, I claimed 20 minutes. I'm already at 20 minutes, but I still have a few questions. Are you okay for a couple more minutes?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to jump back to Heart Strategy Impact, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So we talked about like mission and what you're doing, and some people might have watched this and they're like, oh, what he's saying really aligns with like how our nonprofit operates and what our mission areas are. What exactly do you do?
Yeah. I mean, my first client at the end of our meeting, he said, I feel like you've been my therapist today. And I mean, here's the reality of the situation. We've got new CEOs moving into roles where they don't have any fundraising experience. So one, providing that best practice information to those folks who feel a little unsure about where to go, what to do. Two, it's about building a focused goal around fundraising, around making sure that not only the leaders of the organization from a staff perspective are aligned, but the board is aligned. And I think that you've probably seen this. I have seen this almost anywhere I have been an employee, where sometimes the board and the staff are kind of running in two separate parallel, but they're not working together. And if you've got the board and the staff running in the same direction, on the right, focused, accountable metrics and tasks, you can do a lot more than running parallel or side by side or separate. And so that's the other thing that I like to do is help staff leaders or board members work together to focus on what's the most valuable return on investment when it comes to fundraising. Yes. And the bigger issue is, I referenced this earlier, oh gosh, we need to raise money. Let's write some grants. Grants are great. That's a big bunch of money. But 76% of philanthropy last year came from individuals. 76% of total philanthropy in the United States came from individuals. So if you are not building relationships with your individuals, with the people and folks like you and me who can write a check or make a donation online, you're missing out on a whole host of people. So reminding nonprofits to, yes, write those grants that are reliable, that come in, focus on a strategy of getting some new ones, but get behind the computer, get out into the community and meet with your individual donors and build strong relationships with them, because the long-term benefit of you building relationships with people like you and me and donors is you're going to raise so much more money down the road. It takes some time, but those are the things I'm focused on. Helping CEOs navigate the nuances of fundraising, helping boards and CEOs work together, and then also helping people figure out realistic goals around individual giving and fundraising.
I love, for you with Heart Strategy Impact, I think there's so many fundraising consultants, and I'm not going to hate on them, but I am. There's so many fundraising consultants that come in with all this expertise, bird's eye view, evaluate, analyze, put together a plan, and then here's your fundraising plan without any practical implementation strategies, and without coming alongside and dealing with, like you said, you're a therapist first, right? Dealing with the human that has to do the work and what does that look like and what's realistic within their capabilities and capacity. And it sounds like the work you do, I don't want to say this is a differentiator for you, but that's a whole different amount of come alongside consultative approach than most fundraising consultants. And I'm not bashing, they're just do this. Then they hand that packet over and they sneak away, right?
Well, and what you've hit on is really there needs to be a sea change in the way that we operate as nonprofits. 30 years ago, it was so-and-so who, hung out at the country club and asked their friends to get involved, and the South is still a little bit like that in some ways, but we need to democratize philanthropy a lot more. We need to have more people be a part of the conversation and making a difference in their community. We're seeing younger people shift the way that they give. We're seeing larger instances of, the hollowing out of the middle class when it comes to people with great wealth, giving larger portions of the money. Again, reference to individuals. There's a lot of people with a lot of money who can still make big donations. But you're seeing a smaller amount of people who have the capacity to make a gift because things are just getting expensive. But what has worked in the past, or the modus operandi, was we're going to hire a consultant. They're going to tell us what to do. And then we're probably not going to do it because we're already stretched so thin mindset, and we happen to have a donor give us $10,000 to pay this guy that we don't even know and doesn't know our organization or care about us. And there's probably only one guy in town.
That's so true.
And so what I would rather do is work with you, do a really quick understanding beyond 30 minutes of like figuring out what your problem is. Cause I know in 30 minutes, we can't really get to the meat of the problem. Let's spend some time, get to the meat of the problem, and then figure out and work together and let me help you be accountable to the things you probably don't want to do, which is why we're having this conversation in the first place, because it's really a matter of you as the leader reaching out to those donors and building that relationship. People get nervous about that. But when you've got an accountability coach like me who can say, all you got to do is give them a call. And this is what you say, and this is how it goes. And it's not as scary as it needs to be. And hopefully they build enough confidence over time that they don't even need me anymore, and they're able to just go forth and they're comfortable with fundraising. And that's what I want to do. Hold their hand until they don't need it anymore, and then they can go fundraise and raise as much as they need to.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you again. I said I would claim 20 minutes of your time. We're at 26. But for people watching, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. Heartstrategyimpact.com. I know it's a lot of words, but you could also go to my LinkedIn, which is the handle is CFCTWO. And I also have a page on there, Heart Strategy Impact business page or whatever those are called as well. So you can check me out there.
Okay, well, CF, thank you again for your time, for the work you put into the campaign. Again, links below to CF's LinkedIn, CF's the mini campaigns. I'm going to share some of the specific reels that he created that he talked about. And also, I'm going to drop, if it's okay, go ahead and drop your direct contact info in the link below so people can contact you.
Absolutely, Kelly, anytime.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time. And for those of you that join in weekly, I will not see you next week, but I will see you mid-August with a new face and the same voice for Nonprofit Marketing Mastery Power Sessions.